Hey everyone, it is Kevin Henry, editor-in-chief for drbicuspid.com. Welcome back into another edition of the drbicuspid.com podcast. Thrilled to have you on today, as well as thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Scott Craven. Dr. Craven, how are you?
I'm doing great today. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, glad to have you on. Excited about what we're going to talk about today. But before we dive in, I'd love for our audience just to know a little bit more about you.
Sure. I'm a practicing dentist, almost 30 years now. I love dentistry, but I also am one of those that's a lifelong learner. I strongly believe in that. I've been back to school a couple of times. I've got a master's degree in mental health counseling and a PhD in industrial organizational psychology. And so I truly love the psychological aspects of business and people. And so along with a lot of experience in dentistry, I also love to dive into team dynamics, leadership, development,
Awesome.
things like that as I work with dentists and with my own team in the dental practice.
Well, I'm excited again to dive into because we know team is so important today, keeping that
Yes.
team together. And I know you wrote a book called The Ideal Dental Practice. Is your practice personality sabotaging your success? What inspired you to write the book before we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, I as I've been working with a lot of dentists and helping them uh, develop the ideal dental practice for them, I realized that every practice I go into or that I've worked in has had its own personality, and every
Okay.
personality is different, just like the dentist personality is different. And as I was contemplating that and trying to figure out how do I describe or share with dentists, the key factors that help develop that personality or that ideal dental practice. And that's kind of what generated or was the genesis of writing the book. As I was kind of meditating about it one day, and I had this thought of these three pillars of core important aspects of a dental practice that needed to be in place, even to think about creating the ideal dental practice. And so as I started putting those together, I could see as those three pillars kind of intersected like in a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
That center part, if all those are balanced well, then you can develop the ideal dental practice. But if you're too focused on one or the other, or maybe none, and then you have all these different practice personality types or disorders, I call them in the book, because we get focused on one thing or the other, or just don't have that balance that we need to create the ideal.
Okay, so let's dive in. What makes up a practice's personality in your opinion?
Well, I think that those three core areas need to have proper balance. And so maybe I can talk about those
Yep.
just to give us an idea of how not having one of those could lead to one of the personality disorders. One area is the business systems. We've got to have solid business systems in a dental practice. And I think that's why a lot of times dentists have so much stress and struggle is partially because of the business aspects. A lot of dentists will choose to go maybe to a DSO because they handle all the business systems for the practice and take care of it that way. And so that needs to be a strong aspect in the dental practice to have good, solid business systems, administrative systems in the practice. The second pillar is practice growth systems. We need to have the systems within our practice that are going to help develop the growth of the practice. It's going to develop, clinically what we do in the practice, how we collect, how we produce. All those systems need to be intact and focused on in order to have a healthy practice. And then finally, and this one, it shouldn't be a big surprise to you that this is my favorite pillar in the ideal dental practice is the culture and the leadership development in a practice. I feel like if you don't have a good culture, if you have a toxic culture in your practice, or even one team member that's a problem in the practice, it can really sabotage everything else within the practice. And so obviously, if we can balance all of those and have a nice balance of those three pillars in the dental practice, then we can start working on creating that ideal dental practice. So for an example, one of the personality disorders is I call it the Scrooge practice. And this is a practice where the dentist or the leaders are just hyper focused only on the business aspects of the dental practice. They don't care so much about the growth of the practice, the way the practice looks, marketing, anything like that. They don't care about the culture or the team so much. And they just want to make sure they're squeezing out every dime they can get out of the practice. And so obviously, if you think about this, the story about Scrooge, it's not very good for the employees at the end of the day. And it's not good for the practice either, because you're not usually not investing in yourself. You're not investing in growth in the practice. And so then the practice obviously suffers from that. So that's just one example of a practice personality disorder that I see.
And I'm glad that you're talking about these disorders, because we know today keeping team members, keeping your team together is so important. It goes into that culture that you mentioned.
Right.
So for an example, if a team member leaves and a new team member comes in, do you find that the culture of the practice changes, or do you find that that person, it's important to bring them into the culture that already exists?
I would say yes to both of those. I think
Okay.
that any new employee comes on. We just onboarded a new associate in my dental practice, and having done that, new assistant as well, and so it does change the dynamics a little bit. Now, I find, and I coach my dental clients, that it's very important to know what your values are as a practice, what's your team values, what are the behaviors associated with those values that you have in the practice, and be very clear and upfront, even in the hiring process, saying, these are our values of our practice. This is what we focus on. These are the behaviors we expect all of us to adhere to, so that they know up front if they're going to fit with the culture of the practice. And so even in the hiring process, you can sometimes mitigate a mistake if you're talking about that up front. A lot of times dentists will hire, they've got good experience as an assistant, or they got a good experience here with this or that, but they rarely talk about the culture and what you're trying to achieve and what your vision is for the culture of your practice. And that can be a problem down the road, as you know, because if they don't match with your culture, it's always going to be a struggle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the start of our interview where the ideal dental practice maybe looks different to everyone. That
Yes.
there are different personalities and different practices and whatever that might be. How do you
Right.
kind of learn what your own ideal dental practice looks like if you don't even have an idea maybe of what that vision might even be?
Yeah, that's a key thing that I dive into with dentists, because I was looking at a recent study that showed that over half of dentists, 54% of dentists, are depressed,
Huh.
and they're miserable and they're not enjoying their work. The list goes on, which is really a sad statistic. And I think that happens for one of two reasons. One, they don't know what their vision is, or what the ideal is for them, and therefore they just have this feeling that I'm not happy with my work. I don't know why, but I'm just not having a good time with my career as a dentist. Or secondly, maybe they know what that is. They know what they want to create. They just don't know how to get there and how to create that in their practices. And so I think it's very important, to your point, that dentists take the time to really truly assess and figure out what it is they want from their career and from their dental practice. Because frankly, if you don't see it, if you don't see the vision, or if you don't have a vision of what the ideal practice is for you, then you're never going to achieve it. So we
Yeah.
do need to find out what that is, and that takes some time. A lot of times it's easy to say, well, I don't like this and I don't like that about, I might say, doing pediatric dentistry is not my favorite, whereas someone else, that might be their favorite. And so I think it's easy to say, I don't like this about dentistry, but what is it that you do like? And what is it that would make the ideal? Sometimes I often coin it the phrase of, well, what's your dental utopia? And when we
Huh.
think about utopia, it's just some idealistic thing that, maybe you never achieve. But I think that's the same thing with the ideal dental practice. If we have a vision of what it is, and then we can sit down and make goals to go towards that, all of a sudden things switch in the dentist's mind and their feelings, because even though they're not at the ideal yet, they're working towards that. They're starting to make steps. And I don't know about you, but when I feel like I'm on a mission, or I feel like even if I haven't achieved that goal yet, I feel good. I feel like I'm moving in the right direction, and I can start seeing the gains in what's going on. and then I start feeling better about it. So first, yeah, it's really important to know what would be ideal for me. And when I go in and coach with dentists, obviously I have my ideal
Uh-huh.
idea of what's ideal for me, but it's more important for me to know what's ideal for the dentist that I'm working with. And so any consultant or coach that goes in and says, "Here's what you got to do. This is what you need to do, and your practice will be great." I think, well, step back a little bit. Let's figure out what's ideal here. And then there are some things that are basic and need to be done in every practice, I believe, and we can teach those. But couched with that, we need to know what is it that this dentist wants. What do you want in your practice? What is ideal for you? And then we can go from there and build on that foundation.
And I know you said business systems are one of the core values, one of the core pillars, shall we say.
Right.
I know so many dentists are not comfortable with the business side of dentistry. They want to
Yes.
focus on the clinical side. What advice do you have for getting more comfortable with the business side of things?
Well, I mean, that's really where Synergize Dental, which is my coaching company, started. I started out, in a larger group practice, and we kind of expanded. We built this network of offices. We provided all the business admin support. So we did all our bookkeeping. We did all their accounts payable, handled a lot of those things that the typical office manager might do. And in some cases, dentists do it, which
Uh-huh.
I think, man, you should be prepping a crown instead of doing the payroll,
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
But so one way obviously is to outsource, like we do for a lot of our clients. We handle a lot of those things because honestly, I don't think a dentist in should be doing those things. They're the top of their license is doing dentistry, and that's
Yeah.
where that focus should be, is doing dentistry and not on paying the bills and doing some of these mundane, if you will, but important things to manage the business. Even office managers, I feel like an office manager sometimes does that, but I think we're losing sight of maybe the vision of the practice growth systems when we take that office manager and put her in the back room and have her paying the bills and things like that. When he or she, I should say, are out there building team culture, building team development, working with patients, getting case acceptance, closure, some of these more important things in the dental practice. And so the business systems, some docs will say, I'm going to have a DSO buy me out, and they're going to take care of that. If you want to maintain your independence, which is what something Synergized Dental is, our foundation is, we're trying to save independent dentistry and have that be a viable option for dentists in the future. And so we provide pretty much everything that a doctor would get from a corporate entity without having to sell out. So I think that's an important part of having those business systems, or at least taking care of those for our clients.
Nice. Well, I know you've teased a lot of thoughts. I know that there's a lot more that we could get into, and I know that you get into a lot more in your book. So could you let
Right.
people know, where do they find your book and where do they reach out to you for more information?
Yeah, my book's on Amazon. So if you just do a search, The Ideal Dental Practice, it'll come right up for you on Amazon. You can buy it there. There's a digital version, a paperback version there as well. It's also, you can find it at our website, synergizeddental.com. And if you look up that, there'll be a page there you can go to the book and order it through that as well.
Well, if you're reading this on Dr. Bicuspid, you'll find those links in the article. If you're listening to this through a podcast, you'll find those links in the show notes. So very easy all around. Dr. Craven, I
Awesome.
really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And hey, thanks to all of you who've listened to this episode of the drbicuspid.com podcast. Make sure you're checking out all the resources to help build that ideal dental practice for you. And until next time, it's Kevin Henry, editor-in-chief for Dr. B, signing off. And as always, wishing you nothing but success ahead.